Hey everyone, before we get into today's story, I want to ask you something real quick. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city, your state, even your country in the comments below. I read every single one, and it always amazes me how far these stories reach. And if you love stories about karma coming full circle, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because what happens in this one is something you will not see coming. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. The morning air in Savannah had that thick, sweet heaviness to it, the kind that wraps around you like a wool blanket you didn't ask for. I remember it was a Thursday in late October. I know that because I'd spent the last 9 weeks in Chattanooga, Tennessee, sleeping on a pull-out couch in my daughter's tiny apartment while my mother went through chemotherapy, stage 3, lung cancer. Mama had never smoked a day in her life. Life doesn't care about fairness. My daughter, Rebecca, had driven me to the airport that morning. She'd hugged me tight and whispered, "Go home, Mom. Get some rest. I've got Grandma." I was 61 years old, and my 32-year-old daughter was telling me to rest. That's how worn down I looked. My husband, Gerald, and I had been married for 33 years. We met when I was 27 and he was 29, both of us scraping by in Savannah. I was a hospice nurse. He was selling used cars at a lot on Abercorn Street. We built everything together, or at least that's the story I believed for 3 decades. While Gerald grew his auto dealership empire, Carter Motors, into 5 locations across coastal Georgia, I kept working 12-hour shifts holding the hands of dying people, comforting their families, making sure nobody left this world alone. I never wanted to stop. Nursing wasn't just my job, it was my calling. Gerald used to say he admired that about me. Used to. The cab dropped me off at our home on East Gaston Street, a gorgeous 1870s Victorian that we'd spent 15 years restoring together. I'd picked every paint color, every piece of crown molding, every fixture in that house. I'd stripped wallpaper at 2 in the morning after double shifts because Gerald wanted the parlor finished before his business partners came for dinner. I'd planted the garden in the back courtyard myself, roses and jasmine and magnolias that bloomed so thick in summer the whole block could smell them. I walked up the front steps and reached for the door. My key slid in, turned halfway, stopped. I tried again. Nothing. The deadbolt wouldn't move. I stood there for a moment, confused. Maybe the humidity had swollen the lock again. It happened sometimes with these old doors. I pressed the doorbell and waited. I heard movement inside. Quick footsteps, a whisper, then a pause. Then the door opened, and my husband stood in the doorway wearing his monogrammed bathrobe at 11 in the morning on a workday. Behind him, sitting on my grandmother's settee, the one Grandma Ruth had brought over from her family home in Macon, the one I'd had professionally reupholstered in sage green velvet just 2 years ago, was a woman I recognized, Tiffany Wells. She was 34. She worked as the marketing director at Gerald's flagship dealership. I'd met her at the company 4th of July barbecue 5 months earlier. She'd called me Mrs. Carter and told me my potato salad was amazing. She was wearing my silk robe, the pale blue one with the embroidered hummingbirds that my mother had given me for my 60th birthday. Mama had saved for months to buy it. She'd had my initials stitched into the collar. Tiffany looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't embarrassment. It was boredom. Like I was a delivery person who'd shown up at the wrong address. "Gerald," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. Far away. "What is this?" He didn't invite me in. He stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind him, but not before I saw the dining room table set for 2 with our wedding china, the good china I only brought out on Thanksgiving and Christmas. "Elena," he said. Not sweetheart, not honey. Not the woman he'd slow danced with in the kitchen just last New Year's Eve. Just my name, spoken like a landlord addressing a tenant who was behind on rent. "You changed the locks," I said. "I did. While I was taking care of my dying mother. Your mother's situation is unfortunate, but this has been coming for a long time, Elena. You know that. We've been going through the motions for years." "Going through the motions?" "Gerald, you called me every night while I was in Chattanooga. You said you missed me. You said the house was empty without me." He shrugged. Like I'd asked him about the weather. Things changed. The front door opened, and Tiffany appeared, holding a mug of coffee. My mug. The one Rebecca made for me in her college ceramics class that said "World's Best Nurse Mom" in wobbly, hand-painted letters. "Babe," Tiffany said to my husband, "are we still going to brunch? The reservation's at noon." She looked at me and tilted her head. "I'm sure this is hard," she said. "But he's happy now. Sometimes you just have to let people be happy." She was standing in my doorway, wearing my mother's gift, drinking from my daughter's mug, and lecturing me about happiness. "Gerald," I whispered, "please tell me this isn't real." He reached inside the door and pulled out 2 black garbage bags. He dropped them at my feet. I could see the corner of my scrubs poking out, my work shoes, a framed photo of my nursing school graduation. The glass cracked. "Your clothes," he said. "I packed what I thought you'd need. The rest I donated to Goodwill." "Honestly, Elena, most of it was outdated anyway." "You donated my clothes? My things?" "The house is in my name. The cars are in my name. The business is obviously in my name. You've been a nurse for 35 years. You have a pension. You'll be fine. My lawyer says the settlement is more than fair." He pulled an envelope from his robe pocket and held it out. "Sign these. Don't drag this out. It'll be easier for everyone." "Easier for everyone," I repeated. "You're a good woman, Elena. But you're a hospice nurse. Do you know what that sounds like at a dinner with potential investors? My wife holds people's hands while they die. It's depressing." Tiffany understands business. She understands branding. She understands the life I'm building. The life he was building. As if the last 33 years had been a rough draft he was finally throwing away. I looked up at the second-floor window. The bedroom window. Our bedroom. Tiffany's yoga mat was propped against the glass. How long had she been living in my house? "How long?" I asked. Gerald looked away. "That doesn't matter." "How long, Gerald?" "She moved in the week after you left for Chattanooga." 9 weeks. She'd been sleeping in my bed, wearing my clothes, eating off my china for 9 weeks while I was 300 miles away watching my mother fight for her life. I picked up the garbage bags. I don't know why. Maybe because I was too shocked to do anything else. Maybe because when you've spent 35 years as a nurse, you learn to keep moving even when the world falls apart. I walked down those front steps and didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back and saw them standing together in my doorway, in my home, I would have broken apart right there on the sidewalk. That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Waffle House on Victory Drive, a 2014 Toyota Camry that Gerald had always called embarrassing. I ate scattered, smothered, and covered hash browns because they cost $4.39 and I had $67 to my name. Gerald had drained our joint savings, all of it. 22 years of my direct deposits, gone. I opened the envelope. The divorce papers offered me nothing. No share of the house, no share of the business, no alimony, just a lump sum of $5,000 for 33 years. My phone was at 9%. I didn't want to call Rebecca. She was already carrying too much, caring for Mama. I didn't want to call my brother, James, in Atlanta. He had his own problems. His wife had just left him, and he was raising 2 teenagers alone. I was 61 years old, sitting in a Waffle House parking lot with 2 garbage bags and less than $70, and I had never felt more invisible in my entire life. I opened my wallet to count my cash again. Behind my driver's license, behind the photo of Rebecca's college graduation, behind the picture of Mama and Daddy on their 40th anniversary, my fingers touched something stiff. I pulled it out. A small card, cream-colored, soft with age. The corners were rounded from years of sitting in my wallet. I'd carried it for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Whitfield and Daughters Architectural Patents. It read in elegant, old-fashioned type, and below that, in my father's careful handwriting, "For my Elena." Only when the ground gives way. I turned the card over. An address on Bull Street in Savannah. And below it, account EW, 1962. Do not open this door until you have nowhere else to go, baby girl. My father, Thomas Whitfield. He died 12 years ago, collapsed in his workshop on a Saturday morning while building a rocking chair for a neighbor's grandchild. Massive stroke. Gone before the ambulance arrived. Daddy had been a carpenter, a brilliant one, people said, but a carpenter nonetheless. He'd worked out of a small shop on the south side of Savannah his whole life. Built furniture, repaired porches, crafted custom cabinets for people who couldn't afford the expensive downtown firms. He drove a pickup truck older than me and wore the same pair of work boots until the soles fell off. He was the gentlest, quietest man I ever knew. I'd never heard of Whitfield and Daughter's architectural patents. I'd never asked about it. Daddy didn't talk about business. He talked about wood grain. He talked about dovetail joints. He talked about the way a good piece of oak could last 300 years if you treated it right. He said things like, "Elena, people are like furniture. The cheap ones look pretty but fall apart. The real ones take longer to build, but they hold." I didn't sleep. I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tiffany's face, that bored expression, like I was something she'd already forgotten. At 7 in the morning, I drove to Bull Street. The address led to a narrow brick building wedged between a law office and an art gallery. A brass plate beside the door read, "Whitfield and Daughters, Est, 1962. The same year my father turned 20. I pushed open the door. Inside was a small but elegant reception area, hardwood floors that I immediately recognized as my father's work. The grain pattern, the finish, the way the boards fit together without a single visible seam. Nobody else could do that. Framed blueprints hung on the walls. Patents. Designs for things I didn't recognize. Structural joints. Modular framing systems. Acoustic panel configurations. A woman at the front desk looked up. She was about 50, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Good morning. How can I help you?" I held out the card. My hand was trembling. My father was Thomas Whitfield. He gave me this card a long time ago. I don't even know what this place is. He died 12 years ago, and I couldn't finish. The woman looked at the card. Then she looked at me. Her expression changed in a way I didn't expect. Her eyes widened. She stood up. "You're Elena," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." She picked up the phone. "Margaret, she's here. Elena Whitfield Carter is here." A pause. "Yes. Right now." She hung up and turned to me with the kindest smile I'd received in months. "Please sit down, Mrs. Carter. Margaret Holloway, our managing partner, will be right out. Can I bring you anything? Coffee? Water? Something to eat?" "Coffee, please," I said, and my voice cracked because the simple kindness of a stranger offering me coffee nearly destroyed me. 3 minutes later, a tall woman in her late 60s stepped out of a corner office. She had silver hair pulled back in a low bun, sharp brown eyes, and the kind of presence that made you stand up straighter without knowing why. "Elena," she said, and she took both my hands in hers. "I've been waiting 12 years for you to walk through that door. Come with me." Her office was lined with more framed patents, more blueprints, and photographs. So many photographs of my father. Daddy shaking hands with men in suits. Daddy standing in front of buildings I recognized, the Savannah Convention Center, the new wing of SCAD's main campus, a waterfront development in Hilton Head. In every photo, he was wearing his usual flannel shirt and work boots, grinning that quiet grin of his. "Mrs. Carter?" Margaret began. "Elena, please. Elena, what do you know about your father's professional life?" "He was a carpenter, the best carpenter in Savannah," people said. "He built furniture, did repairs, small-scale work." Margaret nodded slowly. "Your father was a carpenter the way Mozart was a piano player. It's technically true, but it misses the point entirely." She turned her computer screen toward me. "Your father held 47 patents, Elena. 47. He developed a modular joint system in 1971 that revolutionized prefabricated housing construction. He designed acoustic paneling that's used in concert halls across the country. He created a seismic-resistant framing technique that became standard in coastal construction after Hurricane Hugo. I stared at the screen. Patent after patent. Thomas Whitfield, inventor. Thomas Whitfield, co-designer. Thomas Whitfield, lead architect. That's impossible. He worked out of a shop on the south side. He charged $40 an hour. He charged $40 an hour for the work he did with his hands because he loved it. The patents were separate. Every major construction firm on the East Coast licenses at least one of his designs. They've been paying royalties into this firm since 1971. Royalties? Margaret opened a file. Your father established a trust when you were born. 100% of the patent royalties flow into that trust. He designated you as the sole beneficiary because, and I'm quoting his words directly, Elena chose the caring profession. The world will try to punish her for that. This is my way of making sure it can't. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. He specifically excluded all other family members? I managed. He provided for your mother and brother separately through life insurance and a real estate trust. This particular fund, the patent trust, was always and only for you. He told me once that nurses are the most underpaid, undervalued people in America, and he'd be damned if his daughter suffered for choosing to help people. How much? I whispered. Margaret paused. She folded her hands on the desk. The trust has been accumulating for 12 years since your father's death. The patents continue to generate significant licensing fees. Construction firms pay annually. The acoustic panels alone are installed in over 300 venues nationwide. She turned the screen to face me fully. The current value of your trust, including accumulated royalties, active licensing agreements, and projected earnings from existing patents, is $61 million. The room didn't spin. I've seen people receive devastating news hundreds of times in my career. I know what shock looks like. The room didn't spin. Everything just stopped. Sound stopped. Time stopped. My heart stopped and started again. He left you a letter, Margaret said gently. She slid an envelope across the desk. My father's handwriting on the front. My baby girl. I opened it. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, then the ground has given way beneath you, and I am so sorry I am not there to catch you. But I built you something that will hold. I always build things that hold. You know that. You probably think I was a simple man, and I was. The simplest things are the strongest, Elena. A dovetail joint is simple. It's also unbreakable. That's what I tried to build for you. Something simple and unbreakable. I know what the world thinks of nurses. I know what they pay you. I know how they look at you at fancy dinners, like you're less because you chose compassion over ambition. I saw it, Elena. I saw how he looked at you sometimes, like you were something he'd outgrown. I never said anything because it wasn't my place, and because you loved him, and because I hoped I was wrong. But I'm a carpenter, baby girl. I know load-bearing walls from decorative ones. And I worried that one day you'd lean on something that looked solid and find out it was hollow. So I built this. 50 years of patents and designs, all leading to this moment. Not because money solves everything, but because money buys you the one thing you can never get back once it's taken from you. The freedom to choose. Here's what I want you to remember, Elena. And I want you to carry these words the way you carry that card in your wallet. Steady hands build what loud voices never can. Don't let anger drive you. Don't let revenge consume you. But don't you dare let anyone tell you that a woman who held dying people's hands for 35 years came into this world with nothing. You came with everything. You came with your mother's strength and your father's stubbornness, and a heart big enough to hold the whole broken world. Build something, Elena. Build something that lasts. Something that holds when the ground gives way. I love you more than every joint I ever cut, every board I ever planed, every chair and table and house I ever built. You are my finest work. Forever, Daddy. I read it twice. 3 times. Margaret pushed a box of tissues toward me but said nothing. She understood that some moments need silence. When I could speak again, I looked at her. Margaret, I need 3 things. Name them. First, I need access to funds. Not much. Enough to get on my feet. $10,000. Done. I'll have a check cut within the hour. Second, I need a lawyer. Someone brilliant. Someone who handles intellectual property and construction law. Someone my husband has never met. Margaret's eyes sharpened. I know exactly who you need. Patricia Okafor. She's the best IP litigator south of Washington, D.C. She's handled cases against Fortune 500 companies and won. She's also completely outside your husband's circle. Third, I need you to tell me every construction project in the Savannah metro area that uses my father's patented designs. Every developer, every firm, every building. Specifically, any project connected to Carter Motors or Gerald Carter. Margaret's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition. She'd been waiting for this. I'll have the full audit on your desk by tomorrow morning. I didn't go to a hotel. I rented a small apartment on Tybee Island. Nothing fancy. A one-bedroom with a view of the marsh. I needed to hear water. I needed to smell salt air. I needed to remember that the world was bigger than Gerald Carter and his monogrammed bathrobe. Over the next month, I transformed. Not the way you might think. I didn't get a dramatic haircut or buy a new wardrobe, though I did replace the clothes Gerald had donated to Goodwill. I transformed the way a patient transforms when they finally get the right diagnosis, with clarity, with purpose, with the quiet, steady energy of someone who knows exactly what needs to happen next. Patricia Okafor was everything Margaret promised, brilliant, precise, and ruthless in the way that a surgeon is ruthless. No wasted motion, no wasted words. "Tell me about your husband's business," she said at our first meeting. I told her everything. The 5 dealerships, the recent expansion into commercial real estate, his new project, the Riverside Luxury Village, a massive mixed-use development on the Savannah riverfront. Gerald had been talking about it for 2 years. He called it his crowning achievement. His legacy, he said, though that word meant something very different to him than it did to my father. Patricia listened without interrupting. Then she opened her laptop. "Elena, your husband's construction company built the Riverside project using prefabricated modular framing. Do you know what system they used?" I didn't. They used the Whitfield Modular Joint System, your father's patent. It's the industry standard for coastal prefab construction. Every major builder on the coast licenses it. And Gerald's contractor used it without a license, not just for Riverside. For 3 of his dealership buildings as well. They cut corners. Used the design without paying the licensing fee. It's been going on for at least 6 years. How is that possible? Wouldn't someone have caught it? Your father's firm is small. They audit major construction companies regularly, but a regional auto dealer expanding into real estate, he slipped through the cracks. Until now. What are we looking at? Patent infringement damages for unauthorized commercial use of the Whitfield system across 4 properties over 6 years. Conservatively, $14 to $18 million. If we pursue willful infringement, which I believe we can prove because his contractor was explicitly told they needed a license and chose to proceed without one, we could be looking at treble damages. Treble? Triple. Potentially north of $40 million. I sat with that number. $40 million. From a man who'd offered me $5,000 to erase 33 years. "There's more," Patricia said. "The Riverside project." Gerald leveraged everything to finance it. His dealerships, the house on Gaston Street, his investment properties, his retirement accounts. Everything is collateral. If this lawsuit hits before he secures his permanent financing, the lenders will panic. They'll pull out. And if the lenders pull out, he loses everything. Everything. I thought about Daddy's letter. Don't let anger drive you. Don't let revenge consume you. File the cease and desist, I said. But through the firm. Not in my name. Not yet. Patricia nodded. Smart. He won't connect it to you. He'll think it's a routine patent enforcement action. And Patricia, one more thing. I want a full accounting of every piece of personal property Gerald removed from the house. Specifically, I want to know where my mother's robe is. The blue silk one with the hummingbirds? She raised an eyebrow. A robe? My mother is dying of cancer. She saved for months to buy me that robe. His girlfriend is wearing it. I want it back. Patricia's expression softened for just a moment. I'll make sure it's included in the asset recovery. The cease and desist hit Gerald's lawyer on a Tuesday. I know because Tiffany posted a story on Instagram that afternoon. Some people have nothing better to do than file frivolous lawsuits, she wrote, with a champagne glass emoji. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. Gerald. Elena. His voice was different. The arrogance was still there, but underneath it, something new. Fear. Gerald, I need to see you. Something's come up. A legal situation. It's complicated, and I thought, since you've always been good with people, maybe you could help me figure this out. Good with people. That's what 35 years of nursing had been reduced to. Good with people. What kind of legal situation? Some patent company is suing me. They're claiming I used some kind of construction design without permission. The damages they're asking for, Elena, It would destroy me. The Riverside project? Everything. That sounds serious. It is. My lawyer says I need to settle, but the number they're asking, I can't pay it. Not right now. Not with everything tied up in Riverside. And you're calling me because? Because your father was in construction. Sort of. He was a carpenter, right? I thought maybe you'd know someone who could, I don't know, talk to these people. Explain that it was an honest mistake. An honest mistake. He'd built 4 buildings using my dead father's life's work without paying a cent, and it was an honest mistake. Let's meet, I said. Friday. Noon. The cafe on Broughton Street. I arrived 20 minutes early. I wore a simple gray dress, my reading glasses, and a pair of earrings my father had made for me from reclaimed copper. They were small and delicate, shaped like magnolia leaves. I'd never worn them to any of Gerald's business events because he said they looked homemade. They were homemade. That was the point. I brought a leather folder with every document Patricia had prepared. Gerald walked in and I barely recognized him. He'd aged a decade in 3 months. His suit didn't fit right. His eyes were puffy. He sat down and didn't even look at the menu. Thank you for coming, Elena. You said you needed help. I do. This lawsuit, it's going to bankrupt me. And the timing couldn't be worse. The lenders for Riverside are getting nervous. If they find out about this suit, they'll pull the financing. I'll lose the project, I'll lose the dealerships, I'll lose the house. Where's Tiffany? I asked. Not to be cruel. I genuinely wanted to know. He looked at the table. She moved out last week. Said she needed to focus on her career. Of course she did. I'm sorry, Gerald. I truly am. So will you help me? Talk to these patent people? You've always been so good at calming people down. It's what you do. I opened the leather folder. Gerald, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen very carefully. Okay. The company suing you is called Whitfield and Daughters Architectural Patents. Right, that's the one. Some small firm I've never heard of. Whitfield was my father's last name. He blinked. What? My father, Thomas Whitfield. The carpenter. The man you refused to invite to our anniversary dinner because you said he'd embarrass you in front of your partners. The man who drove 3 hours to fix our porch when it sagged and you didn't even offer him lunch. The man who built a rocking chair for Rebecca when she was born and you put it in the garage because it didn't match the decor. Elena, what are you saying? I'm saying my father wasn't just a carpenter. He held 47 patents. He designed the modular framing system that half the construction industry uses. He developed acoustic panels that are in concert halls you've attended. And he left everything, every patent, every royalty, every cent, to me, in a trust that activated 3 months ago when I showed up at his firm with 2 garbage bags and $67 because my husband of 33 years threw me out like I was nothing. Gerald's face went white. Not pale, white, the color of fresh drywall. That's not possible. He was a carpenter. He was a carpenter who was worth $61 million. And you've been building your empire using his patented designs without paying licensing fees for 6 years. The $14 million we're suing you for? That's the conservative number, Gerald. Patricia Okafor, my attorney, says we could push for treble damages. You want to do the math on that, or should I? He couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed. He looked like a man watching his house burn down and realizing he'd left the stove on himself. You told me I came into this marriage with nothing, I said. You told me a hospice nurse was an embarrassment. You told me I was stuck. Do you remember that? Elena, my father spent his entire life building things that would outlast him. Not to get rich, not to impress people at dinner parties, because he believed that what you build with your hands and your mind should serve the people who come after you. He lived in a small house and drove an old truck because the money was never the point. The work was the point. What do you want? Gerald whispered. I want a fair divorce settlement, 50% of marital assets, which is what the law entitles me to after 33 years. Victoria, my divorce attorney, will send revised terms. And the patent lawsuit? Proceeds regardless. You broke the law. But if you cooperate with the divorce and don't waste everyone's time fighting it, Patricia won't pursue maximum damages. You'll lose some properties. You'll probably lose Riverside. But you'll keep the original dealership. You'll have enough to start over. That's more than you gave me, I added. I'm starting over too, Gerald. The difference is, I'm building something that matters." He stared at me. "What does that mean?" "The Riverside property. I've already submitted a counter-proposal to the City Council. A community health and wellness center, free clinics for uninsured families, grief counseling, hospice support programs, nursing scholarships for students who can't afford school, all funded by the Whitfield Foundation. You can't just take my project." "I'm not taking anything. The city will decide." But when they compare a luxury condo development from a man facing a patent infringement lawsuit with a community health center funded by a $61 million foundation, well, I think we both know how that goes. I closed the folder and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved since I was 27. This man I'd made soup for when he was sick, rubbed his shoulders after long days, supported through every business failure and success. This man who decided I was worthless because I chose to hold dying people's hands instead of shaking hands with investors. "My father left me a letter," I said. In it, he wrote something I want you to hear. He said, "Steady hands build what loud voices never can." You've been loud your whole life, Gerald. You've been so busy telling everyone how successful you are that you never noticed you were building on a foundation you stole from a quiet man in a flannel shirt. I stood up. "Elena, wait. Please. There's one more thing. My mother's robe, the blue silk one with the hummingbirds, the one your girlfriend was wearing in my house. I want it returned to my attorney's office by end of business Friday." My mother embroidered my initials in the collar herself. "She's dying, Gerald. She may not see Christmas. And the last birthday gift she gave me was on the back of a woman half my age because you decided my life was garbage." His eyes were wet. I don't know if it was shame or self-pity, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. "Goodbye, Gerald." I walked out into the Savannah afternoon. Spanish moss swayed in the oak trees along Broughton Street. A busker was playing guitar on the corner, something slow and sweet. I dropped a 20 in his case. Over the next 8 months, everything changed. Gerald signed the revised divorce papers without a fight. He kept the original dealership and the Gaston Street house, though the house felt hollow to me now, more like a set piece than a home. Everything else was liquidated to cover the patent settlement. The Riverside project was officially canceled when his financing collapsed. Tiffany tried to come back when she heard Gerald was keeping the house. He turned her away. Last I heard, she'd taken a job in Jacksonville. The robe arrived at Patricia's office on Thursday, one day before my deadline. It still smelled like Tiffany's perfume. I had it dry cleaned and brought it to Mama in Chattanooga the following weekend. She wore it every day for the next 2 months. She said it kept her warm during chemo. She said it smelled like magnolias. Mama passed in March. She went gently, the way she lived. Rebecca and I were there. James drove down from Atlanta with the kids. We held her hands, and I was grateful, so grateful, that I knew how to do that. That I'd spent my whole career learning how to be present in the moments that matter most. The Whitfield Community Health Center broke ground in April. The City Council approved it unanimously. We built it on the Riverside property, right on the water, where Gerald had planned his luxury condos. The architect used my father's designs. His modular framing, his acoustic panels, his seismic-resistant structure. The building was, in every way, a monument to Thomas Whitfield's life work. On opening day, I stood in the main lobby watching families walk through the doors, a young mother carrying a baby and filling out paperwork for free pediatric care, a teenager signing up for our nursing scholarship program, an elderly man sitting in the grief counseling waiting area, turning his hat in his hands, working up the courage to talk to someone about losing his wife. Margaret Holloway stood beside me. "Your father would be so proud, Elena." "I think he would," I said. "He always said the best furniture is the kind that gets used every day, not the kind that sits in a parlor looking pretty." He was right. 3 months after the center opened, I met someone. His name was Arthur, and he was a retired contractor who'd volunteered to help maintain the building. He was 63, had kind eyes and rough hands and laugh lines so deep they looked like they'd been carved by years of genuine joy. He knew my father's work. He'd used Daddy's joint designs for decades and said Thomas Whitfield was the most brilliant builder he'd ever studied. On our 4th date, sitting on the porch of my little Tybee Island apartment watching the sun set over the marsh, Arthur asked me what I'd do differently if I could go back. I thought about it for a long time. "Nothing," I said. Not even the bad parts. Because the bad parts led me here. He took my hand. His grip was steady, the grip of a man who built things. Your father sounds like he was something special, Arthur said. He was. He taught me that steady hands build what loud voices never can. I just had to lose everything to finally understand what he meant. That's my story, everyone. From garbage bags on Gaston Street to building a community health center that serves 1,000 families a month. My father built it, really. 50 years of quiet work leading to this. I just had to find the card, read the letter, and start building. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven Gerald? Would you have pushed for the maximum damages? I genuinely want to know. I read every single comment. And where are you watching from today? I want to know because this story, my father's story, it's not just about Savannah. It's about every quiet person who ever built something real while the loud ones took all the credit. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. I've got more stories coming about karma, justice, and the people who tried to break us and accidentally set us free. Trust me, you do not want to miss what's next. From Savannah, Georgia, this is your friend at Twisted RXT Stories, reminding you that steady hands build what loud voices never can. See you in the next one.